SmartB Sports Update Podcast is brought to you by Optimum CBD. For all your rest and recovery needs, CBD products are your best bet. Go to optimumcbd.store to order now. Free delivery on all orders over $99. You must be over 18 to order. I use Optimum CBD products personally for my rest and recovery. I train 6 days a week in Jiu-Jitsu, as you've probably heard on the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I teach, I train, I compete. And without Optimum CBD products, I wouldn't be able to do it. Optimum CBD for all your rest and recovery needs. You know, I was listening to you and Mitchell Pearce's podcast the other day. It's very good. I was stuck in traffic for 2 hours.
It's a shame that you couldn't join us.
Yeah, government really got to do something about that traffic. But what I was actually thinking was, during it, while I was listening to it, a random thought occurred to me that we haven't had any Latrell Mitchell news for quite a while.
Yeah, well, that drought is over.
I think we need a thing on the wall. It's been X number of days since the last Latrell Mitchell news. I seriously think that, because you brought up the Rabbitohs at one point, and I was like, hey, we haven't heard about the Rabbitohs for a while. Where's Latrell Mitchell been?
Yeah. He's back. Mate, he's back on our rundown today. Yep, Didn't take him long.
We'll start with Josh Addo-Carr.
Yes.
That saga's over. See, I thought he should have gone to the Rabbitohs. But instead he's gone to the Eels.
He has. Yeah, this is very smart salary cap management by the new Parramatta coach, Jason Riles. Josh Addo-Carr, they've snapped him up on a 2-year deal. The second year, there's an option in the club's favour, so a very smartly put together deal. It's a 2-year deal, but it's really a 1-year deal, because after a year, Parramatta get to decide whether they proceed with the second year or not. So very smart. And also, I was also reading, according to these reports, that he's on far less money than what he was on at the Bulldogs. He was on $550,000 a season at the Bulldogs, and he's had to take a huge pay cut because of his conduct, how he left the Bulldogs. So a message to all the kids out there: don't do drugs, kids. It can cost you a lot of money. It's cost Josh Addo-Carr a lot of money, although at least he does have another club.
Yeah, looking at the gains and losses, I was having a conversation with my friends even yesterday. Like, it's pretty hard to easily tip, a wooden spoon for the year, but all of them said Para. Doesn't matter. They've signed Lomax and Addo-Carr, but I think Jason Riles has got his work cut out for him over there. Given when you look at their losses, and they're all voluntary losses. It's not like they fought to keep a hold of Regan Campbell-Gillard, Clint Gutherson, Mike Acevo, Blaze Talangi. And they just let go basically their superstars, and they have signed Zach Lomax and Josh Addo-Carr, but then when you look at everyone else they've signed, it's not really like, maybe there is some like salary cap issues there, and that's what Jason Riles is going to have to clean up. Yeah,
I mentioned it a couple of times before. I think that the decision to let Clint Gutherson go was very much a play to ensure that they keep Mitchell Moses there, and then I think they've just gone, all right, we'll build the team around Moses. We'll start again and rebuild. I think former Panthers fullback Isaiah Iongi, he's going to take the place of Clint Gutherson, but he is no Clint Gutherson. So, but then again, you can't keep everybody, and Parramatta, they've made poor recruitment decisions over a long period of time, paying overs for a lot of players. So, I think that Jason Riles is just clearing the decks there. You mentioned that Zach Lomax is another signing for the Eels. So, they got Will Penasini there. He's another guaranteed starter in the outside backs. You got Bailey Simonson, Hayes Dunster, Sean Russell, and Joe Ash Papali'i from the Bulldogs. So they'll all be battling it out for those back 5 spots, but I don't think Josh Addo-Carr is going to have any trouble getting into that first choice back 5. I think he'll be pretty safe there.
Yeah, I think you're guaranteed Addo-Carr and Lomax are there. I don't know about the rest of it.
Yeah, Parramatta need the strike of Josh Addo-Carr. I've mentioned it a few times. He was the equal top try scorer at the Bulldogs this year with Jacob Carraz, and he played 10 less games than Jacob Carraz. That just shows the try scoring prowess of Josh Addo-Carr. But, I said it before about Josh Addo-Carr. You got to worry about the way he hung his teammates out to dry. At the Bulldogs, he absolutely hung them out to dry. It was their first finals appearance since 2016 this year, an elimination final against Manly there, and he had to make himself unavailable, failing that roadside drug test. So you do worry about a player like that. If he's hung his team out to dry on one occasion, well, what's he going to do again? We also remember that wasn't a one-off for Addo-Carr. He got involved in that brawl at the Koori knockout last year. So he threw his teammates under the bus this year. Parramatta would want to hope he doesn't throw his teammates under the bus again. Thankfully, very smartly, they've got that 1 year option in their favour after his first year. So it'll be a case of see how he goes in his first season there. And then I'd imagine Parramatta will sit down and make a decision at the end of the year whether they go ahead with that second year option.
They're, you mentioned they're going to build the team around Mitchell Moses. He's 30 years old. So it looks to me like they're thinking short-term rapid growth and then not thinking about the long-term. Because, when a club makes a decision to build a team around a half, it's a young half. Like Tigers at Lockie Galvin or something. Obviously, they're looking for quick fixes, but you pick a young half to start building your team around during a rebuild. But the Parramatta have got Mitchell Moses, is obviously one of the best halves in the game, and they're gonna make him in theory he's supposed to have been the main man for years, but just hasn't been that. And does Jason Riles think that's because Clint Gutherson was in the way? And so he's looking for a quick solution to get some rapid results so then he can justify his job and then start really working on something further in the future. I can't see Parramatta winning a premiership in the next few years. But, they were... What was it they were in the finals in...
They made the grand final in 2022.
2023,
I think they missed the 8 in 23 and 24, I believe, but I will double check that.
So it proven for them is just really to get to the 8. That's all Jason Riles.
Oh yeah, if they made the top 8 next year, that'd be an absolute a very good season from them.
He gets a quick turnaround, he gets a quick win, and then he can then start working for the future, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that'd be they'd be more than happy with that if they make the top 8 next year. That'd certainly be performing above expectations for them. Yeah, 2023 they finished 10th, and of course in 2024 they played off in Spoon Bowl against the Tigers, so it clearly wasn't a flattering season in 2024. But you make a good point about Mitchell Moses. This is the issue. If he's 30, well, by the time they complete their rebuild, he may be getting too old. They rebuild in other areas, so that's the tricky thing about rebuilds. You've sort of all got to be going in the same direction at the same time. If your key player's getting too old and you build well around him, well, it might bring you unstuck if that key player's not going to be around too much longer.
Yeah, I just think it might be that. Like, he's looking for a quick win while he actually, whatever he can do really quickly. Because, even still this year. Last season was a tumultuous time for Parramatta. They weren't going too bad, then they had a whole bunch of injuries and they started to go bad, and then they sacked their coach, and then the one time that they actually got all of their players on the field at a time, they dominated. They were up and down, and then they brought in Trent Barrett, who everyone knows, unfortunately, he's not a good first grade coach based on his record, and I hear he's been floated for the Origin.
Yeah, we'll get to that a bit later too. That's on our rundown.
Yeah, so Parramatta was always going to go badly this year based on injuries, sacking of a coach, and so on. And so, quick win for Jason Riles is to get some of those senior players, quickly rebuild a team around the senior players so he can then look to work on the future. Because if he goes to Parramatta and they go crap for the next 2 years, he's just going to get sacked and it'll ruin his career.
Yeah, that's right. I guess with Mitchell Moses now, Parramatta will be hoping that his success in the representative arena in 2024 will translate into club success in 2025. Of course, we remember he guided New South Wales to that series win in the State of Origin, which included that win in the decider up at Suncorp Stadium, a rare win in a decider for New South Wales, as well as guiding Australia to that Pacific Championships title only a week or two ago. So, Parramatta will be hoping the confidence he's gained from that, from owning the representative arena, which, to be honest, is something that Nathan Cleary hasn't done yet. So Mitchell Moses does have that over Nathan Cleary. He's owned the representative stage. Nathan Cleary hasn't. So Parramatta certainly will be hoping that Mitchell Moses can, with the confidence he's gained from that it will, translate into success for the Eels in 2025.
Yeah, they've got to move up the ladder. Like, the Eels, faithful club, everyone are pretty unforgiving.
Yeah, well, I think they're running out of patience. They haven't won a premiership since 1986, so that's a long time between drinks. So, look, fingers crossed they can turn it around. They certainly won't be winning the premiership next year, but as you just mentioned, if they could make the 8, a top 8 would be a really good result for them in 2025. And if they can achieve that, essentially they'd have to be doing what the Bulldogs did this year, a jump of that magnitude up the ladder. If they can do that, they'd be very happy. But I think, as you mentioned before, I think if they can just improve, they'd want to see some sort of improvement. I think if they could finish 9th or 10th, I think that'd be a good start for them.
There's so many teams that I think will make the 8 this year. It's basically 17 of them.
That's what you got to be careful of with the predictions. Is you don't want to end up with 17 teams in the top 8.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, more signing news, because that's what the time of the year it is.
Yes.
So Terrell May has joined the West Tigers. Bulldogs were in the hot seat to take him, which would have been a great signing, but apparently they withdrew their offer. There's something weird going on over there with Terrell May. I got the feeling that maybe they got the sneaky call from someone at the Roosters that said this is the real reason why he was sacked, and the Bulldogs were like, I don't want to take that punt then.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know how close they are these days anymore, but certainly Phil Gould's had a close association with Nick Politis at the Roosters that goes back many decades. So you do wonder. Again, I don't know if they're close anymore. I know Phil Gould seemed to have a falling out with the coach, Trent Robinson, at the Roosters. So I don't know what his relationship is like with Nick Politis these days, but you wouldn't be surprised if, as you said, a call was made from Gould to Politis saying, look, what really happened here? What did he do? And Politis gave him the rundown, and then all of a sudden the offer was pulled. Look, I guess the issue for the West Tigers is that, the Roosters didn't want him for a reason, and you're always worried about a player who another club doesn't want. You go, well, there's got to be some reason for that. He's unwanted by a club, and we've picked him up. But then again, I guess for a team in the West Tigers position, what choice do they have? You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, if you're them. So I think they had no choice but to sign him, and they've just got to hope that he comes good.
See, the whole thing was weird. Like, the Roosters re-signed him and let him go because he wasn't heading in the direction that they wanted to head or something. Yeah,
Brian Fletcher actually had a bit to say about this on radio. So apparently Terrell May came out and said, he was very honest, he came out and said, I don't know if I want to play this game. So that's not really what you want to hear from a player who wants big money. And apparently there was another incident where there was a function to go to and he just decided he wasn't up to it and didn't go. So I think the Roosters, they felt like with this terrible record they've got against the Panthers and the Storm, they felt as though, well, we need to crack the whip here, and they've cracked it with Terrell May. They've let him go. And of course, a player of his ability, he was always going to land somewhere else. And again, the West Tigers, they're not going to be obviously a club with their terrible recent record of winning 3 straight wooden spoons. Well, they have a lot of trouble attracting talent, so they have to rely on these sorts of instances where a talented player has a falling out with his club for one reason or another, that club decides to let him go and then they snap him up. They've had to pay a reported $2 million for 3 seasons for Terrell May, the West Tigers. So
they seem to have a lot of money in their salary cap.
Yeah, I wouldn't be accusing them of cheating the salary cap, that's for sure.
Well,
I know
Parramatta did it and got 2 wooden spoons.
Yeah. That's the thing. Just because a team has a roster that doesn't have a whole lot of talent, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not spending a fair chunk of their salary cap. But again, I sort of think if you're the West Tigers, what choice do you have in this scenario? You need talent. And Terrell May is a talented player. So the only option you've got is to sign him and just hope and pray that he comes good and that he's in the right headspace and he has the right attitude.
Yeah, and that's what the Tigers need, someone to make space for signings like Jack Bird and Jerome Luai. So big forwards is going to be important to them next year, because no matter how good your halves are, it doesn't matter if your forwards aren't going forward and making space and giving them time. You need to get the quick play the ball so Jerome Luai can open up the game and stuff like that. So it's a good signing for the West Tigers, but you never know with the West Tigers. Doesn't matter who they sign, coach, board, CEO, players.
Yeah.
The only thing you know about the West Tigers is the fans will keep going.
Yeah. The fans are extremely passionate, even with their serious struggles in recent times. The fans always turn up. The fans, they're always watching their team. They don't abandon their team. You got to give them credit for that. And again, I'm making an early prediction. I don't think they'll win the spoon, but we'll see how that one goes. I'm certainly not going to be predicting any more than that.
They're not going to go well if the players don't meet the minimum required fitness standards as they come back. And you talked about it with Piercy.
Yeah.
And Greg Alexander's chimed in.
Yes.
Now. This is beyond ridiculous. Obviously Brandon Smith had a lot to say. One of the things I was listening to your podcast last week, and you guys mentioned Brandon Smith had a lot to say. I was thinking about that actually, and I realised because that guy's he has a podcast, right? And that's a danger, to be honest, because you look at how much he came up in the last week news cycle, and how much he had to say about everything going on in the league, and how much he's raised eyebrows at Melbourne, and I'm sure he's some of those West Tigers players.
Yeah.
I think there's some issue with that teams should look into allowing the players who are active to actually have these podcasts and stuff like that, because obviously they control them in the media and they have media commitments, but what these guys say on a podcast that they own.
Well, it's a long. Our podcast goes for an hour and a half or whatever. It's a long time to be talking. And it's a long time for these players to have self-control.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't have self-control, and they just, in a 90-minute conversation where even sometimes when we're on, sometimes you forget that we're doing the podcast and you feel like it's just us chatting. So you can very easily forget that you're in front of the camera and just start mouthing off. And, of course, for current players, they've got to be very careful of that. There's really absolutely nothing to gain out of it, nothing whatsoever. So as you say, if I was the media manager at a club, I'd be terrified of podcasts.
Yeah.
You'd be instructing your team, or you'd be instructing your players, just don't go on them, because it's just too hard. It's too hard to monitor it and manage it.
One of the things about Trump going on Joe Rogan's podcast and Kamala Harris not going on Joe Rogan's podcast was Kamala Harris had rules. She wanted Joe Rogan to go to her. It was only allowed to be an hour, as opposed to Trump, that he went to Joe Rogan's studio and had the 3-hour typical Joe Rogan podcast thing.
Yeah.
And, that was why Joe Rogan didn't do it. And when Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan's podcast, he said, it's because you can, you can bullshit for an hour. But when you start getting into that hour and 10, hour and 20, hour and 30, the real you comes out. It's really hard to.
Yeah.
And so that would be the big issue that was their conspiracy theory for why Kamala Harris's media wouldn't let her go on Joe Rogan's podcast for 3 hours. But that's the thing. That's what he's saying. Brandon Smith has his podcast talking. He can toe the company line for an hour, but after an hour, hour and 10, hour and 20, hour and 30.
I guess the difference is Well, we don't know, but I mean, Kamala Harris's decision not to go on Joe Rogan's podcast may have had something to do with her losing that election.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference is Kamala Harris had an election to win. Brandon Smith doesn't have an election to win. He's an NRL player who needs to toe the line.
He's apparently on the outer at the Roosters.
That's the thing. That's
like,
one thing, and sometimes it is hard to. I mean, look. In all honesty, my thoughts about Brandon Smith are, look, man, you're in trouble at your own club. I don't think you should really be mouthing off about players at other clubs.
Exactly.
Your own club doesn't want you, and this is the thing. The Roosters have shown it with Terrell May. Once they let you go, well, then you're on the radar of the West Tigers. Once you go to the West Tigers, next stop Super League. There's no. That's the West Tigers is the last stop before you're on the plane to England going to the Super League. So Brandon Smith would want to be careful. If the Roosters show him the door, well, all of a sudden, I know they've got Coruscant. They're not exactly going to be, knocking on the door of Brandon Smith. But if it's not the Tigers, it'll be someone like the Titans or someone like that. And once you go to the Tigers or the Titans, next stop, Hull KR or some other Super League club.
Exactly. So
that
was like on the side. On the West Tigers players, Greg Alexander had something to say about him because everybody has something to say about him. But I think Brandon Smith shouldn't be talking about him.
Yeah, and there were strong quotes from Greg Alexander on the West Tigers. He says if that is true, he's talking about these up to five West Tigers players who've been issued official breach notices for showing up for pre-season training out of shape. He says, if that is true, what does that say about the attitude about those Tigers? He says that is a massive problem for a side that ran last year.
And the year before.
Yes, and he says, what player these days turns back up to training after a couple of months off unfit and to the point where they are asked to front the board? It's not the 80s. How disrespectful to their teammates to turn up in the state they're in.
You can get super out of shape in 8 weeks, That's the problem with being in shape. It's hard to get into shape and it's so easy to get out. It's like human beings are naturally meant to be out of shape. But these guys are professionals. Even though they were on holidays, they're meant to take care of themselves. Me, in my personal experience, anecdotally, right, I was competing at under 90 kilos. I went to Thailand for 3 weeks and I came back 98 kilos. And I'm I was under 90 kilos wearing a jiu-jitsu gi, and my jiu-jitsu competition gi is heavy as, so it adds a 1.5 kilos. Because I like the heavy ones so I can rub it on people's faces. They call it the cheese grater. It's an accident as I'm rubbing their eyes. So you can lose, very quickly get out of shape, because I spent the days drinking beers and lounging in the pool and eating a lot of food, food all day in Thailand.
Yeah.
But
it can happen very easily.
These guys are professionals. I don't get paid to do jiu-jitsu competition. These guys get paid. That's
the thing. It's not part of your job to stay in shape. It is part of their job, and they're paid really good money to stay in shape. That's part of the gig. But you can sort of see how these players would easily go down that path. That they've got an intense season that finishes for the West Tigers, it finishes much earlier than other clubs, but then they get this 2-month break at the end of the season where they got all this time off. They don't have to train. Very easy to start, going to Macca's or going to Subway, KFC, and just going down that spiral of putting weight on. And then they probably think, in the back of their mind, they think, once I get back to training, I'll be right, I'll lose the weight again. But, I guess the problem with that mentality is, say if you're, let's say you're a front rower who's 120 kilos. If you put 10 kilos on in those 8 weeks, come back at 130, well, then you start behind the 8 ball, because first you've got to get that 10 kilos off and then go again from that point. It'd be much easier if you came back at the weight you finished the season on of 120.
When I shout out to Leo, who used to do my training for me, when I used to do a lot of competitions. He did my weight programming, diet, everything like that. Check him out, Kettlebell Guy on Instagram. He once said, I have all these little Leo-isms that I use, so one of them he once said to me was, to properly lose and maintain 10% of your body weight should take a year.
Yeah.
to accidentally regain 10% of your body weight takes a month. So that's why you have to be consistent the whole time.
Yeah.
So exactly what you're saying. These guys went away for 2 months, gained probably like 10% body weight in fat, not in muscle, and now they have to come back, and it's going to take them, to properly do it healthily and maintain and stuff like that. It's going to take them a year to get back to full shape. Obviously, they can do it faster because they have like special dietitians and nutritionists and personal trainers and so on at the club, but that's an investment in time, effort, money, everything that is taking away from actually just improving their training. Like, they've added an extra roadblock to the West Tigers avoiding the wooden spoon.
Yeah,
it's terrible behaviour.
Yeah, it's the one time of year where they're vulnerable to putting on weight, because the rest of the time they're either engaged in rigorous pre-season training or they're playing every week and training every week. So at that time, it probably doesn't matter so much what they're eating because they're just burning it off with training and playing. But the 8 weeks where they're not doing anything, well, that's where the trouble is. You can really, if you put on that weight, well, then you got to get it back off again once you get back, and it puts you behind the 8 ball.
Exactly. But more signing news this time around the Bulldogs.
Yes.
The Bulldogs have shown a lot of interest in Ryan Papenhuyzen, who's been given permission to test the... This is even a weird everything from Melbourne, right? My thing is, like, I read, like, he's been given permission to test the market, but not been given permission to leave, basically. So he's been given... it's super weird. And now that the Bulldogs have expressed a lot of interest in Ryan Papenhuyzen and look to be in the hot seat for signing, Melbourne are apparently upset about it and want him to stay at Melbourne.
Yeah. I'm just looking at. I think he's only got 1 year to go.
Yeah, he's open to negotiation.
Yeah, so he's only got 1 year to go on his contract. So we're past November 1. So what's the problem with him negotiate? I mean, he's allowed to negotiate now. Under the rules, he can negotiate for 2026.
So he was apparently told, go test the waters, and then he went and tested the waters, and then Melbourne were like, what?
But that's the thing, he doesn't, because we're after November 1 now, he doesn't even need that permission. He's only contracted for one more season.
If he's gone to the Melbourne Storm and said, I want to re-sign, they said, you know what you should do? You should go check out other things.
Yeah.
And so he's like, all right, I will. All right, fine then. Well, okay, I'm allowed. Yeah. It's after November 1. Yeah. And then he doesn't, and they're like...
they can't have it both ways, the Storm, because, they've... And, I know he's got a long injury history, and I get that's why, he was on 950, and now they want to pull it back to 750. Look, I get that. That's fine. But, again, like you said, don't go complaining when he goes talking to other clubs, when you're the ones who've given him a low ball offer and said, oh, yeah, that's fine if you look around. And then he goes and looks around, and then they get upset about it.
One of my mates said to me, I guarantee you what happened is he went and asked, or his manager went and asked for either an upgrade or an extension at the same price. And they said, no, we're only willing to give you $200,000 less. Go and see what you're worth on the open market, and you'll be proven right. Without, Melbourne doesn't often make these mistakes, but without realising there is a bunch of clubs that will be looking for Ryan Papenhuyzen to come and join them. Yeah. Like a bunch of clubs. Yeah. And they would be willing to pay what Melbourne would consider overs for it.
Yeah. This is the issue for the Storm, isn't it? Like... you can see their thought process, right? Well, we haven't got full value out of you because of your injury history. So instead of giving you 950 that you're on, we're going to bring it back to 750. The problem for them, though, is there's a whole bunch of clubs with a shortage of quality fullbacks out there. You can't the other gun fullbacks in the competition. You can't get them away from their clubs.
Exactly.
And so. Well, then he's gone, and there's a whole bunch of other clubs who are willing to pay him over $1 million a season, and then all of a sudden the Storm have a bit of egg on their face. But I sort of thought, the Storm have got Su'a-Fa'alogo waiting in the wings. This is what they do very well. As I've said before, they always have a backup option in place. You think, how could they let Ryan Papenhuyzen go? But then you go, well, yeah, he's got a long injury history, and they've got a backup option there in Su'a-Fa'alogo. But this is a problem. This is the free market at work. The guy's gone to other clubs, and there's a whole bunch of them banging the door down, wanting to pay him over $1 million a year.
Tell you with just quick glimpse at the ladder, clubs that I would think would be a good fit for Ryan Papenhuyzen are the Bulldogs,
yes,
the Dolphins, the Titans, and the Eels.
Yes,
the Eels just let go of their fullback.
Yes, and because the Bulldogs have been very smart with the way they've been operating their salary cap. And, of course, they've just sacked Josh Addo-Carr, so that's just freed up $550,000 in their salary cap. Apparently, they've got $1.6 million worth of free space in the salary cap, the Bulldogs, so they're in a real prime position to sign Ryan Papenhuyzen. It's a great fit, of course. They had Connor Tracy at fullback this year. Look, he did a really good job, not taking anything away from him, but if you've got Ryan Papenhuyzen available, you're going to take him every day of the week over Connor Tracy. And look, that's not a dig at Connor Tracy. He's a quality player. He'll just slot in somewhere else in their outside backs. But, of course, you're not going to turn down the opportunity to sign Ryan Papenhuyzen. We were talking about the Bulldogs were biding their time, waiting for the right recruits to become available on the open market. Well, Ryan Papenhuyzen is one of those recruits they've been waiting for, surely, and it'll be another piece in the puzzle for the Bulldogs. If they can get Ryan Papenhuyzen, their spine would absolutely be taking shape. You'd have Papenhuyzen at fullback, Matt Burton at 5'8", Reed Marnie at hooker. That would just leave them needing a halfback, and then they'd have one of the gun spines of the competition.
Yeah, and well, who have they got? They could put Toby Sexton at halfback.
Yeah, I mean, but he's another player who, he did pretty well this year, but if you can find a better option, maybe excluding someone like Ben Hunt, who's not worth the hassle at this point, I wouldn't have thought, given his age. If you could find a better option somewhere else, you'd take that better option. I think Connor Tracy at fullback and Toby Sexton at halfback are just stopgap options for the Bulldogs. Well, they had Drew Hutchison played halfback as well for parts of the year as well.
But I think with the addition of Papenhuyzen into that spine and Matt Burton there already and Reed Marnie, it leaves the Bulldogs less in need of a gun halfback.
Yes, it does.
They can compensate because of the lack of halves around the league, actually. So they can use someone like Toby Sexton, and it won't be as... But yeah, like you said, when you have Connor Tracy and Toby Sexton, 50% of your spine are guys that are not like, number one players type thing. You're in a bad space, 50%. But when only 25% of your spine, your other 75% is Ryan Papenhuyzen, Matt Burton, you're in a really good place.
Yeah, like you say, if they were to sign Papenhuyzen at fullback, well, then they can afford to wait for the right recruit at halfback, and they don't have to make a panic signing. That's the thing. That's the advantage of signing quality players in other positions. It makes it there's less urgency to make panic signings in other positions. Yeah, that's the advantage of quality recruiting.
I think those 3 out of 4 would make the Bulldogs probably in the top 8 spines in the league. I'd say top 8 spines in the league, just off the top of my head. Obviously, there are better ones, but you look at like Willie Mason talked about Newcastle. They have one.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, other Newcastle guys, but what Willie Mason said, not me, they had one. And that put them at the bottom. Like you look at someone like the Dragons. Well, now they've got Clint Gutherson. They've got Jacob Little, Kyle Flanagan, and who knows who's going to play 7. You say look at something like that, right? Clint Gutherson, Jacob Little. His name's Jacob Little, yeah, Jacob Little. Kyle Flanagan and a halfback. When compare it to Ryan Papenhuyzen, Reed Marnie, Matt Burton, and a halfback.
Yeah. Well, that's it. The upside for the Bulldogs is, the reason they got back into the top 8 this year, it wasn't really because of their spine. Yeah. It was because of... You'd probably go, it was because of the recruitment of Stephen Crichton. It was because of Viliami Kickout. It was because of... I know Matt Burton's in the spine, but he's only one spine player. It's probably because of Matt Burton as well, combined with the signings of a bunch of quality utility players, guys like Kurt Mann, Jamin Salmon, these sorts of players, and even someone like a Bronson Cherry, who they plucked out of nowhere, who'd served a long-term drug suspension. Signing him, he would have been on minimum wage coming back from that long suspension. But that's how you manage your salary cap. That's an effective salary cap. You sign players like Bronson Cherry, and then they just come good for you. Yeah. But that the reasons they made the top 8 were for those reasons, not because of their spine necessarily.
Yeah, and with the addition of Ryan Papenhuyzen, you expect them to go better.
Yeah, you think. Look, I think if they would have signed Ryan Papenhuyzen for next year, I think they'd be top 4.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So that's why Melbourne, as I said at the beginning, like Melbourne doesn't often make these mistakes, but I think they made a big mistake if they actually wanted to keep Ryan Papenhuyzen by saying, well, go and see if you're worth more. Because there are a few clubs who could, with the addition of Ryan Papenhuyzen, jump some 3 or 4 spots on the ladder, and they have salary cap space to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Gone with the Bulldogs and the Dragons. The whole round 1 2025 draw has been released, and the Bulldogs will play the Dragons at home. Mm-hmm. No, Dragons are at home. Yeah, the Bulldogs will play the Dragons at Dragons home.
I'll just have a look here. I've got it right in front of me. The Dragons are the home side, yeah.
Yeah, and it's on the 8th of March at 5:30 p.m, so that makes it a Saturday, right?
Yeah, it is. It's the Saturday 5:30 p.m. game in round 1.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we talked about the Dragons welcoming Clint Gutherson. Valentine Holmes as well. Another impressive signing, Damien Cook. And then, you got the Bulldogs who... made their first final series since 2016, as we talked about, under Cameron Ciraldo, with Stephen Crichton as the skipper there. So that'll be interesting. Our two teams going head-to-head in the first round. Of course, we got the Vegas doubleheader to open the season.
That's what it is. Yeah. I was trying to think, why is the Raiders on 11 a.m.?
Yeah. So it's Las Vegas, Raiders, Warriors at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. That's the weekend before on March 2. Same thing that happened this season.
Yep. Followed
by the Panthers and the Sharks, the other Vegas game. Yeah, then obviously March 6th, the Thursday, is Roosters v Broncos. March 7th, the Friday night games, West Tigers v the Knights. The Dolphins Rabbitohs is the other Friday night game, as we talked about, Dragons v Bulldogs. Saturday, 5:30. Saturday night game will be Manly and the Cowboys in that first round. And the Sunday game to open the season, that first round, obviously the week after those Las Vegas games, there'll be the Storm and the Eels.
There's a lot of intriguing stuff in there. Like, the Raiders-Warriors is definitely the worst game of the round. Panthers versus Sharks is just a weird one in... Vegas. Roosters and Broncos is obviously the best game of the round. You would think. You got Roosters looking to... I think Trent Robinson's looking to save his job.
I think he's got to be under serious pressure. This is a coach who has a star-studded roster every year, and I know he's won those 3 premierships. But look at the roster he's had to work with his whole career. He's never been tested. He's always had some of the best players in the NRL at his disposal. And I think that they should be up there competing with the Panthers and the Storm. There's no excuse for them to have this terrible record against those two teams. So if they have yet another underachieving season next year, well, I think he's got to be under serious pressure. At some point, he can't live off the premierships any longer. Remember, their last premiership came in 2019. And I know that there's a lot of clubs with much longer premiership droughts than that, but you've got to factor in the roster he's had at his disposal for the whole time.
Well, it doesn't matter about the premiership droughts because it's the Roosters and they don't have premiership droughts anymore. Since 2003? Was it 2003 was when they broke their last premiership drought?
2002 they won with Ricky Stewart as the coach, yeah. And then obviously they lost to your Dragons in 2010 in the grand final. But of course the premierships they won 2013, 2018 and 2019. Yeah. All those 3 premierships coming under Trent Robinson. Yeah,
1975 to 2002 is their longest premiership.
Yeah.
Since then it's been no more than 10 years. And no more than 10 years is not bad. It's actually pretty good given the fact that a lot of clubs have... There's a lot of clubs in the league that have gone a lot longer than 10 years.
And this is the thing, it's not so much that they haven't won a premiership since 2019 with the star-studded roster. It's more that they've been underachieving every year. Yeah. I mean, if they were just falling short of the Panthers and the Storm, competing with them, beating them quite a few times, you'd go, all right, a few things haven't gone their way, they're still right up there. But they've got a diabolical record against those two teams. Absolutely atrocious record. They haven't come close to those two teams. Those two teams are miles ahead of them, and there's no excuse for them with the star-studded roster they have year after year. They've made some changes to it, as we've talked about. Terrell May is a player that they've let go. They've sent him on his way. But you feel like, well, more's got to happen than that. They're not just going to compete with the Panthers and the Storm just because they've let Terrell May go.
They've got a lot of losses, actually. Like, when you look at the, or they've gained Chad Townsend. Who cares?
They have, yeah.
That's all they've gained.
That's all they've gained.
That's the only person they've gained. They've re-signed a bunch of players like Nat Butcher, Lindsay Collins, Angus Crichton, Spencer Lenny, Junior Palgale, Billy Smith, Sandon Smith, Daniel Tupu, Connor Watson, Noel Falhu White, and Siwa Wong. But they lost Michael Jennings, who played very, very well all year, Luke Keary, Joey Manu, Terrell May, Dylan Napa, Jared Ware-Hargreaves, Stili Tupanua. They've lost Joseph Suoliti. Look at those names they've lost. Their roster is nowhere near better this year.
No, well, I did talk about
next year.
Yeah, I did talk about it with Mitchell Pearce the other day. They are looking at Ben Hunt. They are having a look at him.
That's the cover injuries.
Yeah, with Chad Townsend there, they are looking at Ben Hunt. So we'll see how that goes for them. As you said, they've lost a lot of quality players. So
he bought a house in Queensland, Ben Hunt.
Yeah, we're not sure what's going to happen there, whether they sign him or not. But either way, they're going to need a lot more than that. That's the thing. They had that terrible record against the Panthers and the Storm with all those players you just mentioned who are now leaving, and they haven't replaced them. So you really struggle to see how they're going to improve next year, given all the players they've lost. And I think, given all that, he's going to be under some serious pressure at the end of next season. Maybe it's just time for the Roosters to have a change as coach. This is the thing, you can't just keep him on because he won premierships 5 years ago. You got to look forward. You got to look at, what's best for us going forward.
What's a club that he could go to change the culture of? He should go to the West Tigers.
Well, it's probably, and you know what? I'd love to see him go there because I'd love to see him put to the test with a struggling roster and not have everything laid out to him on a platter.
Go to the West Tigers and bring Sonny Bill Williams and James Maloney and see if he could turn that nonsense around.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's that was again, we've gone off on a tangent. Exactly, see Brandon Smith. The conversation thing was Bulldogs to play Dragons is round one and moved into Trent Robinson.
Yes.
Okay. Back on track with the State of Origin coach.
Yeah.
Voss wants them to New South Wales to appoint a new coach as soon as possible. It's around this time last year that Michael Maguire was announced as coach.
Look, I like Andrew Voss's passion for the game and everything, but he's saying that the coach needs to be announced in the next month. In the past, we have had emerging Blues camps over the summer where there is access to players. Is that going to run this summer? They do get the nucleus of the squad together and start talks, so I think it needs to be announced in the next month. Certainly, we can't go into the NRL season without knowing who the coach for the New South Wales Blues will be. I think it needs to be decided in the next couple of weeks. Well, the season starts in March. It's November. He's saying, we can't go into the season not knowing who the coach is. It's like, just relax. It's November. The season starts in March. I don't think that means it needs to be announced in the next couple of weeks. The team gets announced a week and a half before the first game. The first game is in May. I think he just needs to relax a little bit here. Look, it's okay. Why is he saying the coach needs to be announced in the next couple of weeks? The first game's not until May. That's 6 months away. What's he talking about?
I guarantee you they'll announce it within the next 11 days. Because last year it was 30th of November 2000, they announced Michael Maguire.
The team gets named a week and a half before the first game, which is in May. It's okay. I don't think you need to announce the coach in November if the first game's not until May. You do have 6 months up your sleeve. You don't know who the team is until a week and a half before the game. So it's okay. I don't think you need to be rushing in November to rush to an announcement on the coach.
I don't think there is it, but it's the same process as last year, right? So it was around September. I'm just looking at the history of the news, right? This is so funny. Around September last year, they finally decided that Brad Fittler wasn't going to be the coach, right? October this year, Michael Maguire announced that he was October 1st, bringing a new deal, starting at the Broncos, leaving the Blues. Okay, so same thing as last year, and then there was a whole bunch of talk leading up to it, and then at the end of November, they announced Michael Maguire would be the new Blues coach. So, it's going to happen within the next 11 days anyway. But they don't need to rush.
Yeah,
they need to pick someone, but they don't need to rush. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
because they can say they have an emerging blues camp over the summer. The summer is also another 2.5 months long. When is the emerging blues camp? Isn't it in January?
And this is the thing. I mean, how many players... This is an emerging blues camp. Okay, I don't think many emerging blues players are going to be in the team in game 1 next year. So... Who cares about that? Why is that a priority? Surely there's others who could manage something like that other than the head coach of the New South Wales team. I think this is just a big fuss over nothing from Andrew Voss. And that's one thing he does is he makes a big deal out of things that no one cares about. He makes a big deal about naming a New South Wales Origin coach in November. He's worried about that when the first game isn't until May. If none of those emerging blues camps, not one of those players is going to be in the team for game 1 next year.
No.
So what's he worried about? Who cares about an emerging blues camp in reference to the head coach next year?
The list of people that they're looking at: Matt King, Laurie Daly, Paul McGregor, Trent Barrett, Dean Young, John Cartwright, and Brad Arthur. I guarantee you. They don't need to. Nobody needs to worry about it. But I bet you within the next couple of weeks we're going to be saying, blah 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 has been announced as a Blues coach.
Yeah, I don't know about Trent Barrett, to be honest. I think you got to use a bit of common sense. You got to go. This is a guy who hasn't had a good record as an NRL head coach, and I know they're not the same thing. I get that it's not the same NRL head coaching compared with State of Origin coaching. I understand it's not the same thing, but you can only go on what you know, right? You can only go on what you know. You know that Trent Barrett is not a good NRL head coach. He's not. He takes an NRL gig, it doesn't go well, and then he ends up back in an assistant gig.
Terribly. Yeah.
So you need to be wise to that, and you need to go, well, if he doesn't have a good record as an NRL head coach, why would we hire him as State of Origin coach when there are other options available to us?
John Cartwright's apparently he's going to be the new coach of Hull FC, and Brad Arthur's staying at Leeds. So
Hull FC, is he? Yeah. Oh, he might. Brandon Smith might be on his radar next, I reckon.
That's so funny. We'll see. I don't think Laurie Daly would be a good choice either, because one of the issues they had with Laurie Daly was he was just too nice. He wasn't able to make the hard calls because everyone loves him and he's a great guy and he's so friendly. Yeah.
This is the thing. I think he had Laurie Daly, to be fair to him, he had a 1 from 5. He won 1 series out of 5 as New South Wales coach, and I did mention it with Mitchell Pearce the other day. We should remember that was at a time of great dominance for Queensland. Of course, they won 11. 100%. They won 11 out of 12 series between 2006 and 2017. They had that great side with the likes of Thurston, Cameron Smith, Cooper Cronk, Billy Slater, Greg Inglis, etc., etc. So Queensland won 11 out of 12 series, and Laurie Daly was there between 2013 and 2017, and he actually won that 1 series that New South Wales won across that time. But look, all that having been said, you got to go, well, he won 1 from 5. They've tried him. Why would you hire Laurie Daly as coach when, as we say, there are going to be other options to choose from? So why hire Laurie Daly as coach? Given his poor record as New South Wales coach when there's other options available, just like why hire Trent Barrett when he hasn't had a good record as an NRL coach? surely you'd go for another option, and no, Ricky Stewart is not that option. No. Someone else will become available who will be a better option than Ricky Stewart as well. People need to stop deluding themselves into thinking that Ricky Stewart is a great coach and has a great record as coach just because his mates in the media keep looking after him. They need to see it for what it is. He hasn't won a premiership for 22 years. New South Wales need to be looking in another direction.
Craig Bellamy, they could pick Craig Bellamy was also floated, but Craig Bellamy didn't do well. He didn't like coaching against the Melbourne players. That was his big issue.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. I think he coached it because, again, such a great club coach, but he coached it like it was a club side, and that didn't work in the Origin arenas. So,
and he picked Kirk Gidley as captain on the bench.
Yeah, they'll find somebody in New South Wales. They will. Mitchell Pearce mentioned it. Someone like a Boyd Cordner. I wouldn't. I'd rather see something like that because Boyd Cordner, we're not sure how he would. There's no reason to think Boyd Cordner wouldn't go well. Someone like Mitchell Pearce has a rap on him. Yeah. He's somebody who would have the respect of the players, and that's important at Origin level. Somebody who the players respect. I'd be going for someone like Boyd Cordner over someone like a Laurie Daly or a Ricky Stewart or a Trent Barrett, Definitely. Who are all coaches that, for different reasons, you'd be looking in another direction.
Definitely. But it doesn't matter now. Like, it'll happen.
Bless you.
Thank you. It doesn't matter now. Andrew Voss just needs to calm his farm, as my wife would say. Because it doesn't matter now. And it will happen in the next 2 weeks anyway, because that's the timeline in reality. State of Origin starts in December. So, November is the time off when all the admin people are doing their work because all the players are just coming back and so on and so forth. And the boards will meet and they got to meet now and appoint a coach, and all of these guys that I mentioned, like Trent Barrett and Dean Young and stuff, will go give their presentations. This is what I'm going to do, and so on and so forth. And then they'll make a decision very quickly because they don't need to mull their time over. It's not actually that hard. After you met with everyone, they can make a decision the same day. So yeah, I reckon within 2 weeks we'll be talking about who the new State of Origin coach is. But next year they've announced the fixtures and it's off to Perth.
Yes.
I might have to. I don't want to go to Perth, so.
It's a bit of a trek for us, but on the upside is that New South Wales have never lost against Queensland in Perth. So a very happy hunting ground for New South Wales in Perth.
And we've got Game 3 in Sydney.
Yeah, so Game 1 at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. We mentioned it on May 28. Yeah, Andrew Voss, it's May 28. It's November at the moment, so we do have plenty of time to get that coach sorted out. Game 2, June 18 in Perth. Game 3, July 9 in Sydney. So, that's the upside for New South Wales. Perth, they've obviously got a really good record there, never having lost to Queensland there, and that Game 3 in Sydney. So, New South Wales will like that schedule. Yeah. As they will look to defend their title next year.
They should do it. Doesn't matter who the coach is. Andrew Voss, go be the coach. So there's some news out of Queensland with, why Billy Slater and Kevin Walters have had a bit of a falling out, and Reece Walsh is at the centre of it. These Queenslanders, man. Yeah,
it's sort of... so the situation was, there were reports on Monday that Billy Slater, as the Queensland coach, and Kevin Walters, who is the recently departed Brisbane Broncos coach, they couldn't see eye to eye how to best use Reece Walsh. Slater had one idea of how to use him. Kevin Walters had a different idea. So apparently the clash centred around where Walsh should position himself in the defensive line, whether he should be taking more runs from dummy half. There were a number of instances in the last few seasons where Walsh was caught out of position in defence. But gee, I don't know. I'd be backing Billy Slater's judgment on that over Kevin Walters, to be honest. I think a lot of what went wrong at the Broncos was to do with Kevin Walters, and from what I've read, a lack of work ethic, not dotting the I's and crossing the T's on a lot of things. I think Slater is a much better prepared coach and a much better tactician. If I had to choose whose advice to take of those two, I'm taking Slater's every day of the week over Kevin Walters.
Guarantee you Michael Maguire is going to use Reece Walsh more in the way that Billy Slater suggested.
That's the thing. I think Michael Maguire would be more open to listening to Billy Slater than Kevin Walters.
Like, Reece Walsh gets caught out of defence, and there's some really hilarious cuts on TikTok of Reece Walsh being just in the completely wrong position. Seriously, and doing weird things. So, obviously the Broncos did do well. And, yes, Billy Slater lost State of Origin. but
that having been said, he did win the 2 series prior to that. He still has a very good
You'd
record.
have to say Billy Slater's resume is, at this point in time, better than Kevin Walters.
Yeah, it's just Kevin Walters missing the finals 3 out of 4 seasons with a star-studded roster. I know they made that grand final in 2023, but again, you look at the overall picture, missing the finals 3 times out of 4 with that roster, that's just not up to par, not up to scratch, those results. So, yeah, look, it's going to be interesting now. All of a sudden, Michael Maguire and Billy Slater, obviously they were at loggerheads in 2024, and now all of a sudden they're going to be working together, with one as Broncos coach, the other one as Queensland coach, working together, trying to work out a good plan for Reece Walsh. And look, they'd want to be in step with one another. I think it'd be very confusing for a footballer to have one coach saying you should do this and another coach saying, well, you should do that.
You pick the player at Origin level. You pick the player to play because they play the type of game that you're trying to play. You don't get the player to change the type of game they're playing to suit. You don't pick the best players and then tell them, but play how I want you to play. You go, this is how I want to play. I need to find my best player who's in the best form in that style of play. So if you want a ball-running fullback, then you find the best ball-running fullback. You want a playmaking more, Kalen Ponga style fullback, then you pick Kalen Ponga. It's not a matter of changing the play to suit you at Origin. Michael Maguire is going to want to... However Michael Maguire uses Reece Walsh, Billy Slater will pick the best fullback for the job based on how he wants to play. Yeah,
Reece Walsh strikes me as a sort of player who I don't think you should be overcrowding him with too much information. I think he's a highly talented, instinctive footballer. I think you just let him play what's in front of him largely. I wouldn't be putting too much in his head. And if you got one coach telling him one thing and another coach telling him another thing on how to play, that's going to be very confusing for a superstar young footballer. So, yeah, it is important for Maguire and Slater. It's hard to believe you're talking like that about those two. You need those two to be on the same page next year with regard to Reece Walsh. Yep.
Continuing with the Broncos, the Ezra Mam. Ezra Mam was charged, and they've decided not to charge him any further, so it is just the bare minimum charges, actually. It's the driving under the influence, right?
Formerly charged with drug driving and driving unlicensed. And he injured a 4-year-old girl who was a passenger in the vehicle. I think she suffered a broken hip.
That sucks.
So I think he's really gotten off lightly here, and he's really lucky. We talked about Josh Addo-Carr before. Josh Addo-Carr sacked by his club for testing positive to drugs. And again, Josh Addo-Carr didn't drive on the other side of the road and crash into someone, injuring the passengers. Josh Addo-Carr wasn't driving unlicensed. Josh Addo-Carr gets sacked, and Ezra Mam gets kept at the club.
Yeah, I saw a thing where it's like Josh Addo-Carr has form though, but so does Ezra Mam, because a couple of weeks before he was in trouble in Bali. So it is a bit of a...
Yeah. The male driver had serious bruising. A 4-year-old female passenger had a fractured hip. And and Michael Maguire says, the fact that Mam checked himself into rehab and accepted his mistake shows the 21-year-old has taken ownership of his actions. If it was a player the Broncos didn't need, they wouldn't be talking like this. They would have sacked him. He's only saying that because he knows he needs Ezra Mam It's amazing how, we need this player on our books, so I'm going to make excuses for him and say, oh yeah, he's checked himself into rehab and accepted his mistake. If it was a fringe player they could have done without, they wouldn't have showed him that sort of sympathy and they would have sacked him in a heartbeat. So it's just a load of garbage from Michael Maguire to say that.
Checked into rehab is the biggest load of crap.
Yeah, it's a load of rubbish. It's fine when it's a star player who we need to win football games. If it's some fringe player we don't need, all of a sudden, we're not taking your excuses, we're going to sack you.
I know multiple people have checked into rehab on the advice of their lawyer.
It's like you say, as soon as he got charged, go into rehab, into rehab.
Rehab is for people with actual problems. What they're kind of saying by him checking into rehab is he had a drug problem. So how much has he been taking drugs all year to require rehab, Like, what? What? Did you just basically admit he's been on the coke all year?
I just don't understand the giant leap on this Ezra Mam story. We were talking about a lawyer who said he could be facing, 14 years in jail a couple of weeks ago?
Not to charge.
And then all of a sudden we're saying, the NRL might not punish him that harshly. Hello, if he's going to go to jail, I don't think he'd be too worried about what the NRL's punishment's going to be.
I'm curious why the police. I would be curious to know why the police decided not to charge, given that there was a 4-year-old girl who was injured.
He's injured a 4-year-old girl in a crash.
A broken hip is
seriously.
No joke. Broken hips are like lifelong issues type thing. Can be,
She might be, and again, it's not. We talked about it's not just the physical injury. She might be scarred by the incident. We don't know how she's going to react to it.
I've been hit in the car again, anecdotally, by another car. It was just a slight bump, nothing. Like, it just made it so my rear door couldn't close properly, and I got it fixed in 2 days. Right, slight bump, but I was on the way to school, and so my kids were in the car, and my daughter, who's 9, still talks about it. She does live in her traumas. That's her life. Like, first time she tried to ride a bike, she fell off and then didn't want to try and ride a bike for the next 5 years because she remembered falling off.
Yeah.
Stuff affects people differently, but that's, you don't know how it's going to affect a 4-year-old. And
and you'd have to think, again, I'm no legal expert, but you'd have to think that he's very lucky that there weren't more serious injuries suffered by these passengers. If these passengers hadn't been seriously injured, then I think he'd be in a much more serious situation than what he's in. He should be very, very thankful that they seem to, thankfully, have escaped with minor injuries. These passengers.
Cars these days, they're pretty...
secure.
Yeah. I listened to Elon Musk talk about how they should actually... Now the majority of... A large number of internal injuries are caused by seatbelts. And he's like trying to get seatbelts removed from new cars because of the technology of weight monitoring for airbag distribution, because what the Teslas do is measure where your body is on the seat and has airbags everywhere.
Right.
And so expels the airbags at different speeds and force depending on where you're sitting to prevent full injury. Like, basically wraps you in a big bubble based on where you're sitting and then deflate. And it's better than a seatbelt. But they still have to have seatbelts because seatbelts are a legal thing,
Yeah.
So cars today, it kind of prevent those injuries a little bit, especially because it was from like a red light or whatever, and he was not going fast. But imagine he was going down the highway at 110. That's what you do. It's not good to think about. Sometimes it's not good to think about, like, imagine if this, but sometimes it is. In situations like driving, and if he was like the Josh Addo-Carr one was so bizarre. We talked about it at the time. They just let him go, and I was like, don't they have to stop people who test positive? But Ezra Mam was like actually charged with drug driving, so under the influence while driving as well.
Yeah.
So it is a bit rich from the Broncos and the NRL to do nothing, just be based around the charges rather than around the what ifs in that situation.
Yeah, so we got to be honest and say, look, the Bulldogs probably sacked Addo-Carr because he is getting close to the age of 30 and
salary cap space for Ryan Papenhuyzen.
This is the thing, whereas the Broncos are only keeping Ezra Mam because he's young and he's a superstar.
And there's no halves in the available.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you get rid of Ezra Mam, well, who do you replace him with?
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's the thing. It just annoys me when they, if they're a superstar player, he's checked into rehab. He's owned his mistake.
Oh, it cost him $100,000. I don't care what it cost him.
Yeah, I don't care either. I'm more worried about the 4-year-old girl who got injured as a result of his actions.
Oh, that poor guy spent $100,000 on it.
Yeah, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less if he had to spend more than that, if he had to spend all of his money on it. That's just frustrating to me. If it's a superstar player, he's owned his mistake. He's checked into rehab. He's owned up to it. If it's a player they can do without, we've given him enough chances. He's got to go. We're holding him accountable.
Or if Ryan Papenhuyzen's available on the market and they want to buy him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you've had enough chances. Now we're going to go sign Ryan Papenhuyzen.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, now let's talk about our best friend Latrell, who went so long without any issues. I'm so sick of these exploitative ways they are trying to exploit the rules around suspensions. Latrell, there's the NRL All-Stars will be so Latrell Mitchell has to serve a 1-match ban because that's his 14th ban from last year. They tried to overcome it by saying he wasn't injured for the last round, so they were going to name him. The NRL said, please, you said he went on holidays, guys, and now they're going to name him for the All-Stars, and he'll serve his suspension in the All-Stars and be back round 1.
Yeah, so it's a load of rubbish. It's weak leadership from the NRL. It's the classic play when all the heat's on and the media are watching in August or whenever it was. We're not letting you serve it now. You got to serve it in round 1 next year, and then all of a sudden we get to November when most of the media are probably on holidays and not really looking very closely, and the Test cricket summer is about to start. All of a sudden, Latrell, you want to serve the suspension in the All-Stars game? Yeah, no worries at all. It's weak leadership from the NRL. They shouldn't be allowing him to serve the suspension in the All-Stars game. He's got a 1-game suspension. Look, I wouldn't have an issue with him playing in the All-Stars game, but he's got to serve his suspension in the NRL in round 1 next year. You can't be letting him serve the suspension in the All-Stars game. It's a cop-out. It's weak leadership from the NRL, and why are we not surprised about that?
Nelson Asafa-Solomona was also suspended for the 3 tests for New Zealand. So now he only has to sit out one NRL game because he already sat out the grand final. Now he only has to sit out 1 NRL game. This is nonsense.
Yeah.
Because what it should be is they shouldn't be allowed to pick suspended players. Like, that's it. But what they're doing is they're really, when you think about it, or if they pick a suspended player, they should have to pick 1 less person in their squad. Because it doesn't make any sense. They really are just, using their mateship and stuff to exploit a rule. Because, if Nelson Asafa-Solomona or Latrell... Okay, we'll go back to Latrell Mitchell. If he's getting picked for the All-Stars, right, but he's suspended, and that's going to count as his suspension, then the All-Stars shouldn't have to pick 1 less player in their squad. They should have 1 less player, but they don't. They won't. They get to pick the same amount of players, and they just say, well, we would have picked Latrell, so that's his suspension.
Yeah, and look, I'll say it again, I wouldn't have had a problem with him playing the All-Stars game as long as he serves his 1-game suspension, where he's supposed to serve it, which is in the NRL round 1 next year. The thing that really annoys me is, let's be honest about the All-Stars game. Look, no one cares about the result. It's a fun exhibition game to start the year. It's an exhibition game. It doesn't mean anything. It's a meaningless game. Everybody knows that, right? No one cares about the result. So don't let a player serve a suspension in a trivial, meaningless game. He's got to serve it in a serious game, which is the NRL round 1 game next year.
So say he would have got picked, so the suspension is served.
It's rugby. Look, again... he has a 1-game ban, so look, let him play the exhibition All-Stars game, that's fine. But no, he shouldn't be playing in round 1. That was the deal. The suspension was handed down under the proviso that, well, you can't play in round 1 next year. That was part of the deal at the time. They can't then turn around in November and go, we'll let you serve it in the All-Stars game and you're good to go for round 1. No, it's a load of rubbish, and it annoys me because the NRL gets so defensive when it comes to criticism, like Andrew Abdo and Peter V'landys. They're so sensitive to criticism. Well, what do you expect when you're making decisions like this? What do you expect? Of course people are going to be critical. Show some backbone. Show some leadership, for God's sake.
Yeah, it's beyond ridiculous. I hate it so much. And Nelson Asafa-Solomona, even though New Zealand lost. Got to serve his 3 of his 5 game suspensions in New Zealand. Again, if they were going to pick him, if they were going to allow it, which they shouldn't allow it, if they were going to allow it so he would have been picked, so therefore the suspension counts, then they should have to take him along. They should have to pay him, right, for the games, and he's not allowed to play, and they have 1 less player in their squad. Then he's actually serving a suspension. Then
you're right.
the New Zealand team or the All-Stars team is actually affected by the suspension. But by saying Latrell Mitchell can serve his ban in the All-Stars match, the All-Stars is completely unaffected. Latrell Mitchell is completely unaffected. The Rabbitohs are completely unaffected. There is no effect. No one has been punished. He has served nothing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, like I said, they should pay Nelson Rosoff for Solomona. Because if they did that, if they forced the All-Stars or they forced the New Zealand Rugby League or Australian Rugby League or anyone to pay, those organisations would think less of it and go, no, actually, we don't want to pick Nelson because we don't want to pay him for those 3 games because now we have 1 less player in our squad and now our whole entire thing is affected. The NRL All-Stars would go, no, we won't pick Latrell because that's a waste of money.
Yeah, you're right. So if a player gets suspended as a result of an action in an NRL game, well, that NRL team pays the penalty of not having that player for that amount of time. Yeah. So the same should apply to a representative team in that scenario.
Exactly. Well, if it's going to count.
Yeah. They need to cop some sort of penalty as well if they've got a player suspended, like you said. But they never seem to cop the penalty. They just sort of make out like, we would have picked him, even when they wouldn't have picked him, just so that they can have a cop-out scenario where the player serves a suspension in games no one cares about, and then they come back for the NRL season, which is a lot more...
I mean, the absolute worst scenario, which there was a player a couple of years ago that I can't remember who it was, they were going for surgery, and they delayed the surgery so he could serve his suspension in whatever rep match was on. Then, when the NRL agreed, then he had the surgery. Yeah. So it is like this mateship trying to overcome the rules, and it's
I'd even be inclined to just go, well, look, in rugby league, the NRL is a bigger deal than international football. So I would just say, if you've got someone like a Latrell Mitchell or a Nelson Asofa Solomona, I'd just go, look, because international football is not as big a deal, you're eligible for the international tournament, but you got to serve your suspension in the NRL next year. And so if they want to pick him, go ahead, fine, pick him. So then you leave it up to the international team. If they really want him, go ahead, pick him. Either way, you're serving your suspension in the NRL next year.
It's not the way it is now is a load of bullshit.
I think State of Origin's different because State of Origin is a bigger deal than the NRL, but I don't think international football is not as big a deal as the NRL, and All-Stars games are not as big a deal as the NRL.
I think with the State of Origin, if they're going to allow them to serve their suspensions and not in the NRL, they should have to pick them. They should have to pay them, and they should have to have 1 less person in the squad. Because it is the same type of exploitation, where they say, we would have picked him, right? And so therefore the suspension counts, but there is no effect. No one is being punished here, actually. I mean, he's missing out on State of Origin. Right, but he's there's no negative effect actually. It is a good exploit because the problem is it opens up the Pandora's box, even though they don't exploit it that much. It opens up the Pandora's box where really they could do it about anyone. They can say, Lockie Garvin was the Smoky to play the 18th man, and we were going to pick him for the 18th man, and so that his suspension served during Origin, even though they weren't ever going to pick him. I can't think of any examples where they actually went that far to pick someone who wasn't actually going to be picked and say, but that is the ability for them to do that. There is the ability for them to actually exploit it and go, someone in Clubland can go to, who's the assistant coach at New South Wales, say, can we just put this guy on the squad so he can serve us? Serve the suspension? What do you reckon? What do you reckon? I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Sick of the loopholes, sick of the exploitation of the rules.
Exactly.
Show some backbone, NRL, for once in your life.
Sick of special treatment for superstar players just because they want them to play in the game. Like it's there's always other superstar players. Speaking of which,
yes,
players who should actually be in trouble. AJ Brimson has been cleared after the NRL investigation in Melbourne Cup betting. Now this doofus posted a screenshot of him winning. Well, not him. Someone winning massive amounts of money on the Melbourne Cup, and below that was a rugby league bet. Now all players are banned from betting on rugby league. 100% of players, coaches and staff apparently, banned from betting on rugby league. It's a fine for your club and a deregistration. You're not allowed to work again if you bet. AJ Brimson said, "Oh, it was my mum's." Sure, bro. Sure.
Yeah, well, it seems like they've accepted that explanation. But
Mum's account, sure.
Who would know if that's legitimate or not? But they seem to have accepted it, and there's no sanctions taken. But either way, what a stupid thing to do, to post, to brag about a Melbourne Cup bet and then below it in the same photo with rugby league bets. Seriously,
I'm 100%.
It's just not smart at all.
I'm 100% certain it was probably an account that was made in his mum's name. No, I used very careful wording there. Because I've heard some things from different people about bookmakers.
That's the thing. The account may well have been in his mum's name, but
you're not
I don't want to make any allegations. I don't want us to get sued.
I heard some things from some people because you're not allowed to share your betting account. It's actually illegal. It's like against the law to share your betting account.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean people don't do it. And I've heard some things from some people in that industry that told me they know some sports people, not necessarily rugby league, sports people who have accounts that are not their accounts.
A lesson for all NRL players as a result of this: don't post anything regarding betting on any sports on social media ever.
Ever.
Yeah.
No, look, it doesn't win you any friends, to be honest.
No.
You know, you already get
trouble.
paid a lot. People don't like the fact that you get paid a lot, and you adding a big, massive win. Even if it's not about rugby league, like if I won $100,000 in Melbourne, you're not going to win any fans.
No one's going to be going, "Oh, well done, footballer, on hundreds of $1,000s a year. You won $10,000 on the Melbourne Cup." No one's going to be giving you a pat on the back. No one likes you
for that. Like, just that's it for rugby league. As usual, there's a lot about rugby league. I was like, thinking there hasn't been much. Seriously, on Sunday I was thinking there hasn't been much rugby league this week, and then I went back and looked and I was like, actually, there's been heaps of rugby league.
So you know what? The first test starts on Friday, Australia and India.
Who's the opener?
I don't know if we're going to lead with cricket next week. I think it'll depend on the news in rugby league. If there's a strong news week in rugby league might still be the lead, even with
there's always
the Test cricket starting. That's
interesting.
That's the thing. I think cricket only leads for us next week if there's not much rugby league. I think if there is a lot of rugby league news, we might be leading with league again. But anyway, so this first test, Australia and India, after all this rubbish limited overs cricket, we're finally getting into the real stuff.
Who's the opener?
Yeah, so it will be Nathan McSweeney. He's come out of left field. He's won this sort of bat-off between all the contenders. He's going to be opening with Usman Khawaja in the first test at Optus Stadium in Perth starting on Friday.
Test debut.
Yeah, so he had the first training session for Australia. He was sort of put under the gun by Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc. So they've given him a bit of a tune-up to what he's got to expect. In that first test against India on Friday, McSweeney, he's a 25-year-old. Apparently, it was a baptism of fire. He looked rather uncomfortable as he played and missed repeatedly against Cummins and Starc. But, I guess those conditions over in Perth, obviously now that the test match is on at Optus Stadium, not at the Wacker, but traditionally that Wacker pitch, the pitch in Perth, has been very friendly to the fast bowlers. So he needed that sort of an audition. He needed the likes of Cummins and Starc roughing him up before that first test. And, India's been much better out here in recent times, as we've said. They've won the last two test series out here, so India much better at playing in Australian conditions than they have been previously. But as we talked about, what would be of great concern for India is their form going into this series. We mentioned they had that shock 3-0 whitewash series loss against New Zealand in home conditions recently. So That'd be a real concern to India, and I think Australia would certainly go into this as heavy favourites. Compounding that for India, their captain Rohit Sharma won't be available for the first test. This is a huge blow. He's had to stay back at home for the birth of his second child, so he's unavailable. So Jasprit Bumrah, the vice-captain, he's set to lead India in Rohit Sharma's absence. And also for India, another blow. So they'll be without two of their first-choice top three. Shubman Gill is going to miss that first test as well with a fractured thumb. So if it wasn't bad enough for India to lose 3-0 to New Zealand in that series at home, well, they're going to be without Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill, two of their top three, against those Australian fast bowlers on that Perth pitch, the likes of Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood. Good luck with that, India. I think Australia will win this first test and win well. That's not to say that India can't come back into it later once they acclimatise a bit more and they get the likes of Rohit Sharma back. I'm not sure how long Shubman Gill is going to be out. I think he might come back later in the series, but that's a real blow not having two of their top three for that first series, for that first test in Perth.
According to Google, win probability, because we won't talk about odds, Australia is 66% chance to win. With a draw, 7%. So, yeah, Australia's heavy favourites there.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally Australia started the summer at the Gabba, which is fast bowler friendly. Now they're going to Perth, which is even more traditionally fast bowler friendly. As I mentioned, though, Optus Stadium, a different ground to the WACA that we're used to, but still I think the conditions very much fast bowler friendly. So that really plays into Australia's hands because Australia's strength is their bowling attack. So it certainly makes sense for them to start with the Perth test and get off to a winning start. And again, unlike most series at home, this is of particular importance for Australia, having lost the last two series to India at home.
Yeah, definitely. But they did smash Pakistan in T20 cricket. Nobody watched or knew was on. Like smashed them. It was 3-0, yeah. So they
yeah, 3-0. So yeah, this is just a series that nobody could care less about.
Didn't even know it was on.
Yeah,
someone was talking about how they need tickets to Friday's game, and I was like, dude, the ODIs are finished. They're like T20s. Like,
yeah, so game 3 finished on Monday night in Hobart. Australia won game 3 by 7 wickets with 52 balls to spare. Marcus Stoinis blasted 61 not out off 27 balls, but again, this was a series nobody cared about. It didn't need to be on, just like that 3-match ODI series didn't need to be on. We really should be starting the international summer with the first test. This was just meaningless cricket leading up to it. There's really no need for these T20Is and ODIs anymore. We don't need that cricket outside of the 50-over World Cup or the 2020 World Cup. We've got enough 2020 cricket with the franchise cricket, the IPL, the Big Bash, and you know we've got Test cricket. So if you want to clear some of the international schedule, well, you really should be clearing out the ODI cricket and T20I cricket outside of the World Cup formats.
Yeah, it's as I said, I don't know anybody I knew even knew it was on, even the cricket fans, except for one person who I know is from Pakistan and wanted tickets. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
But apparently the ICCCC has a minimum requirement for all test playing nations to play a certain amount of international playing nations. So play a certain amount of internationals every year. And
well, they need to remove that requirement because it's not working. And we didn't get a chance to talk about it because obviously I had Mitchell Pearce on last week, so I wasn't going to be discussing the cricket with him. I'm sure, like us, he had no interest in it and didn't care about it. But so we talked about, there was actually the ODI series, you might remember, it was a decider. It was 1-1 going into the third game, and Pat Cummins and a few others, well, Pat Cummins in particular, decided he'd rather go to a Coldplay concert in Sydney rather than play in the third game, which was being held in Perth. So if Pat Cummins, the Australian captain, isn't going to take it seriously, well, why should you or I take it seriously? They need to stop patronising the fans and playing these games that nobody cares about and wake up to themselves and address these scheduling problems. Otherwise, they're going to turn out like rugby union in the next 10 or 15 years.
No, that's the thing. People defended Pat Cummins about it because you know why they did what the thing was. Like, it's okay that Pat Cummins went to a Coldplay concert instead. The reason was that the internet defending was because nobody cares. So
it's like, well, don't have the game then. Don't play the game then.
Nobody cares and don't have the game.
Yes, if the
that's the point of it.
If the Australian captain doesn't care, I don't think anyone else is going to care.
It's okay that he skipped the game because nobody cares about the game. Then why have the game?
Yeah. If he's more interested in going to a Coldplay concert, well, then I think a lot of other people are going to be more interested in the Coldplay concert as well.
Don't have the game. But it was 5 players they rested for that match. You know, it was a decider. Do they not have pride in the jersey? Do they not want to... And like, a lot of the people are like, one of the things I saw was if your boss tells you to take the day off, are you going to take the day off to go to the Coldplay concert, or are you going to go do your work? I was like, dude, I'm not an Australian cricketer playing for Australia in a test in a international against Pakistan, who have just beaten England. At least what I want to do is prove that I'm better than England. If I was a cricketer, I have pride in my jersey and pride in my country, and I want to play. If my boss said, mate, go to the Coldplay concert, and I was an Australian cricketer, I said, nah, bro, we have to win this game.
Yeah.
Everyone, come on, gather round. Yeah. I'm the captain. We have to win this game. Let's tell the coach that we have to win this game. Yeah. Because we're Australia and we have to win, and it's in Australia. Yeah. Sweet, bro. Yeah. If I'm at work and I'm just sitting there writing emails, and my boss says, do you want to go to the Coldplay concert? I'm going. But I'm not a cricketer. I'm not a sports person. So
he's quick. Pat Cummins is quick to get on his moral high horse about something like Australia Day. But yet when Australia are playing in a series decider, he's going to a Coldplay concert. So maybe before he comments on Australia Day, maybe he should be playing for his country in a series decider ahead of going to a Coldplay concert. Seriously. And you know what? He's a great player and everything, Pat Cummins, but there's no way that Steve Waugh or Ricky Ponting would have gone to a Coldplay concert over playing in a series deciding game.
They want to wonder why nobody rocked up to welcome the Australians back from after they won the ODI World Cup. Yeah. Well, the players don't care enough, so why would people care? Yeah. But you look at those photos of the Indian team rocking back up after winning the T20 World Cup that nobody else in the world cares about. Yeah. That was crazy. Yeah. That was... Just check out the aerial shots of that. And, that's why the cricket is losing popularity in Australia. Because the players don't care. So why would anyone else care? Like I said, the internet's excuse and the defense of Pat Cummins is, it was about a game that no one cared about. They don't have the game. Yeah, so you either pick your full-strength team for a series decider or don't have the game. Yeah. You don't have the game and then not pick your best team for it. And they said, they're resting for the Test series. What? Yeah. The game was like 11 or 12 days before the Test series even starts, and it's a one-day game. And Pat Cummins wasn't the only one. Steve Smith was rested. Josh Hazlewood, all the Test players were rested from the third game. 5 best players.
Which was 12 days before the first Test, and it was a one-day game, and they needed a rest.
Was that, what? Have you ever thought the reason they were resting is because they were going so badly against Pakistan and needed to rest for the Test? Bro, it's cricket. All right, you don't need rest. You play 3 games in a week. Okay, this is just.
It's an ODI game. Batsmen don't need a rest. Bowlers bowl a maximum of 10 overs in an ODI game. It's not like a Test match where they're bending their back all day long. They bowl their 10 overs and that's it.
Just don't have the game.
Yeah,
that's the solution. Yeah. That's it for cricket. We'll see if cricket actually performs for us.
Yes, we hope with the Test series starting on Friday that cricket turns a corner and we get interested in it now.
Hopefully TPG can fix my IP address in the office so I can put it on the television because... it's a day night. Is that the day night one? No, the Adelaide one is the day night one.
Oh no, Perth will be day night. For us it will be day night, because of the time difference.
Isn't Adelaide actually a day night one?
I'll look that up. I'm sure there is a day night test, but I will look that up. Is it Adelaide?
I don't know.
I'll look it up. Adelaide usually is the day night one, but I will look that one up now.
It's a 5-test series, right?
It is 5 tests. First time in a long time these two teams have played in a 5-test series. So let's have a look. Yes, the Adelaide test, you're right. The Adelaide test is the day-night test. So effectively we get 2 day-night tests in a row to start off because the Perth test, it isn't a day-night test in itself, but because of the time difference with the eastern seaboard, it will be a day-night test for us watching it. It'll be day-night test hours. And then the Adelaide test is actually a day-night test. So, yeah, you're right about that. It is. And then, obviously, the Brisbane test, the Melbourne Boxing Day test, and the Sydney New Year's test will all be day test matches. But good for us to have the first 2 tests as day-night tests for us on the eastern seaboard.
On to other sports. Cheating McSteroid face Jannik Sinner has won the ATP Finals over Taylor Fritz. I think the only reason Jannik Sinner beat Alex de Minaur is because he's on steroids. And that's going to be my line for the rest of my life now. Whenever he wins, it's because he's on steroids, because he's being able to get away with taking steroids and not get suspended. So the only reason he beat Taylor Fritz is because of the steroids. And Taylor Fritz should have said it in the press conference as well. Only reason I lost is because of steroids. Doesn't matter how dominant or how badly you play, because Jannik Sinner was on steroids.
Yeah, well,
so yes, he won the ATP Finals.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Jannik Sinner winning the ATP Finals title. That comes on the back of his Australian Open and US Open triumphs this year. But as you pointed out, they're tainted, and they are tainted because of that positive doping test result that he returned.
So he's world number steroids now. That's his ranking. He was previously world number 1. Now he's world number steroids.
Yeah, look, Novak Djokovic didn't take part in that tournament this year. Say what you want about Novak Djokovic, at least he's never tested positive.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Novak Djokovic earned his success on merit.
If Sinner goes and wins 38 Grand Slams, doesn't matter, because they're all on steroids. And he ain't no Novak Djokovic.
This is the problem when you test positive is, justifiably or not, you're going to be tainted by that. Yeah, that's it. That's it. People are going to look at everything you do and go, oh, that's not legitimate now.
If you test positive and don't cop your punishment, it's more so. If you test, like I talked about Khalil Roundtree, he tested positive through a tainted supplement, self-reported, took his suspension, came back and fought for the title in one of the best title fights of all times. I accept that Khalil Roundtree probably wasn't on steroids prior to that because he accidentally took steroids, like it wasn't steroids or whatever, performance-enhancing drugs. Self-reported, discovered it himself, self-reported to the UFC, accepted his punishment, accepted his suspension, never do it again, will continue to get tested, and so on and so forth. Jannik Sinner hired a really expensive lawyer and got nothing. So next time he pops, it's just, oh no, I'm not going to go get my really expensive. And we'll talk about John Jones, during the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul discussion. But that's the same with John Jones. John Jones in UFC could be the greatest fighter of all time. Got done for steroids. He said his actual quote was they were dick pills. One of the things when you're actually taking PEDs, Viagra supplements or dick pills are something that you take to do some other stuff. Because whenever you take PEDs, dude, bro science and everything, but whenever you take certain drugs, there are other drugs you take to reduce the side effects of those drugs. And
it's just a spiral, isn't it? And then there's probably side effects to those other drugs.
So you take more. When John Jones said it's just dick pills, everyone who takes steroids went, you were taking them to counter the effects of whatever, the Anavar or something right? And then when he got done the second time, he said, I'm going to show you evidence, 100% evidence in my press conference that will prove that I definitely didn't cheat. And then sat down and said, I know God told me that I definitely didn't cheat. Started crying on camera. That was his evidence. Okay, so he was tainted, right? The thing with John Jones is he never copped his punishment. He actually flipped on a whole bunch of people, and the UFC had to change the rules because they were like, we'll no longer reveal suspensions publicly, because John Jones flipped on a bunch of people and said got his suspension heavily reduced, and then in his next fight tested positive again, but used some bullcrap excuse about how it was, and the UFC passed it. There was only a picogram detected, so it's a drop in the ocean of steroids. Yeah, still steroids, bro. And Jannik Sinner is that now. Everything he does, steroids.
And this is the thing, like you pointed out before. Sure, there was a small amount in his system. Of course, we got this story about his massage therapist, for some reason, putting some cream on his hands and not washing his hands and infecting Jannik Sinner somehow. Yeah, that sounds like a likely story to me. But this is the thing. This is the other issue. Is some people I've spoken to about it talk about. Oh, there was like a billionth of a gram in his system. It's like, yeah, but that might be all that was left in his system at the time of the test. That might have just not completely cleared out of his system, and there was only that little amount left.
Cycling off. They have like a half-life. They operated in half-lives, right? You know, half-life is how long it takes for half of it to go away. And that's how they cycle off. They judge it based on the half-life. So they go, like, I have to not take my steroids for 3 months because I know I'm going to have my test in 3 months. So the half-life is this, blah, blah, blah. I need to stop it on the 18th of November because I'm going to have my test on the 18th of February.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah, he just calculated his half-life wrong, and my allegedly, or whatever, my opinion... don't sue me, Jannik Sinner. But I know you've got good lawyers.
And look, yeah, he does have good lawyers. We should be careful of that. But I should point out that that slap on the wrist punishment that he got of only being fined his prize money at the tournament where he tested positive and costing him the ranking points from that tournament, that slap on the wrist punishment didn't go down too well with WADA, who have appealed that really petty sort of sanction against him, and a final ruling's expected from the Court of Arbitration for Sport early next year on this. So Jannik Sinner's not out of the woods with regards to a suspension. A suspension may be handed down early in the new year. Watch this space. Yeah, he may not be out of trouble. So that's going to be very interesting. They
suspend him and they retroactively strip him of everything.
Yes.
But also the Davis Cup
Good
finals.
thing we talked about this at the back end of the podcast.
You know Jannik Sinner's got lawyers.
We may not lead off with this item. We are talking about this well into our podcast.
You know Jannik Sinner's got lawyers. you just know it. World number steroids. But the Davis Cup finals start tonight.
Yes.
Rafael Nadal is preparing to bid farewell to tennis forever.
Yes.
This is going to be his last match.
Yeah, well, that's right. And this is knockout. Spain will face the Netherlands in the quarterfinals. So that's the thing. And they play each other on Tuesday, so it'll be later tonight.
Yep.
So we could wake up in the morning and Rafael Nadal's career is all over. That's a possibility.
Another great who never took steroids.
Yes. So Spain face the Netherlands. If the Netherlands win, well, that's it for Rafael Nadal. It's his last tournament, the Davis Cup finals. So we're not sure if he's going to play singles or not. He may only feature in the doubles for Spain. Obviously, unfortunately, he's sort of gone on the decline in the last couple of years in particular, and probably gone on a little bit too long. But certainly... obviously, the second best player of all time. You would have to say he's won the second most Grand Slam titles of all time with 22, behind Novak Djokovic with 24. Of course, we talk about that superhuman record of his at the French Open with 14 French Open titles, just staggering, extraordinary. We talk about Pete Sampras being one of the all-time greats of tennis, which he is. Pete Sampras won 14 Grand Slam titles across his career. So Rafael Nadal matched Pete Sampras' career at one major with 14 French Open titles. That just shows the extraordinary feats of Rafael Nadal. This has been a sensational career, the Don Bradman of the French Open, bringing down the curtain on his career at the Davis Cup finals here.
Yep, and at the end of it tomorrow, or possibly the next few days, we're going to say he is a champion, second greatest player of all time, never took steroids, and that'll hold forever.
Yes, absolutely. And the quarterfinals come to a close with Australia taking on the USA as well. So Australia's squad: Alex de Minaur, Alexei Popyrin, who had that really good result this year, winning the Canadian Masters title, Jordan Thompson, Thanasi Kokkinakis, Matt Ebden, of course. Alex de Minaur coming off a debut appearance at the ATP Finals. Really well done for him to qualify for that top 8 event at the end of the year. Sensational. Well done to Alex de Minaur, and of course Australia captained by the legendary Lleyton Hewitt as well.
Yeah, and
no Nick Kyrgios. We don't want Nick Kyrgios in the Davis Cup team. I'm glad he's not playing. He doesn't care about it. These are a bunch of players who care about Australian tennis. I'm not sure about Kokkinakis, but everyone else I think cares. And great to see that Lleyton Hewitt is heading up the efforts there.
Yeah, I wonder if Nick Kyrgios will play in the Australian Open.
Yeah, I think he's going to play. I don't know how long it's going to last, given his
half a set before
severely
he retires.
underdone preparation for
half a set before he retires.
I'll tell you what, though, it'd be nice to actually talk about Nick Kyrgios being on the court this summer as opposed to everything else he's done off the court.
And over the weekend, it was a big combat sports weekend.
Yes, it was. Yes, I thought you'd be
on Saturday.
About
that Mike Tyson and Jake Paul.
I did watch
happened.
How
did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it wasn't too inspiring. I only watched it because it was on Netflix, and I have Netflix. I wouldn't have paid to watch it, but I thought, well, I got Netflix, I may as well tune in.
I likened it to that. I felt dirty while I was watching it. You know, I likened it to watching those old videos of the feeling I got was like watching people getting beheaded. You know, I just felt dirty. It was gross.
So as a fight enthusiast, you just weren't happy that your sport was reduced to this?
It was so gross. Like, it didn't need to happen. Mike Tyson looked like a 60-year-old man. You know, everyone was building up about how he was so good on the pads and in his Instagram highlight reels, but as George St. Pierre said, everyone's a world champion on the pads. You know, you go through these set pieces on your pads and you build up your speed and you look amazing, but it was like an old man getting beat up by a young man. I can't understand why Jake Paul would do something like that if he wants to be taken serious as a boxer.
This is the thing. I mean, he gets $40 million for it. All right, good luck to you. You get your payday. But where's the honour in it? Where's the honour in a 27-year-old beating up on a 58-year-old? Where's the honour in that victory? Mike Tyson's nearly 60. He's nearly at pensioner age. Yeah. And you're beating up on him as a 27-year-old. Seriously?
Awful. It was so awful. And there was also 2 or 3 world title fights on the card. You know, but nobody watched the other.
No, I think the women's bout seemed to be a bit from what the commentators were saying. That was a big deal.
Actually a really good fight. That was. I haven't watched them. I only watched the highlights. What I had was I had it running in the background, like on another screen, while I was watching the TV show Arcane. They dropped 3 episodes on Saturday, so I was watching Arcane. And then I saw Tyson and Jake Paul are walking out, and then I stopped watching Arcane and watched that disgusting display of just garbage. No one is happy with it. No one. And seriously, now Jake Paul's calling out again Conor McGregor to take on Conor McGregor in an MMA fight. Like, Conor McGregor, old, retired, doesn't fight. He's all on the coke. Currently going through a rape trial. Admitting, like everyone always says, he's always on coke, and then he had to admit during the rape trial that he actually takes cocaine. You know. He doesn't train properly. You want to do an MMA fight with him. Like, it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. First of all, he'll submit you because he actually does jiu-jitsu and he's a brown or black belt in jiu-jitsu. Just submit you. Yeah. Like, it's the thing. Like, you just submit you. It doesn't matter if you're wrestled in high school. But Jake Paul's also, like, twice as big as Conor McGregor. Mm. Like, it's just beyond ridiculous. The guy's, like, if you want to be taken serious as a boxer, Paul had one boxing match with a boxer and he lost. Mm. And he's got power. And he didn't look good against Mike Tyson. Like, he just didn't even look like a very good boxer against Mike Tyson. But it was awful, and, like, you know, I've hated Jake Paul and his nonsense for a while, but that just was just the icing on the cake. I don't know who is going to continue to watch that nonsense.
Yeah, there's not many sports where a 58-year-old would still be going. Maybe something like golf. Bowling. Maybe like lawn bowls, maybe like equestrian or something like that. But certainly not fight sports. I would have thought fight sports would be at the bottom of the list for a 58-year-old to be participating in.
It was gross. And then the next day there was the UFC 309 with John Jones.
Yes, I actually was watching this at the time it was live. I was flicking around, had nothing to do, and the prelim bouts were on Fox, and then all of a sudden I see Donald Trump walk out with Dana White out of nowhere. So I thought, oh wow, and this grand entrance went on for 10 minutes.
Yeah, so Donald Trump and Dana White are really good friends because the UFC could never get into New York. Yeah. That was one of the things. And then Donald Trump actually made it happen. So Dana White and Donald Trump have known each other for like 25 years or something like that. And he brought his whole team. So RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Vivek
Ramaswamy?
Yeah, butchered his name. They were all there. And actually it was Elon Musk was there.
Yeah, RFK was there. Yeah.
And He goes to the fights often. He really loves the UFC. Like, he really does. It's not a thing that he does for publicity. Like, people want to say it's some kind of publicity stunt.
Yeah.
But he actually fully loves it. And he talked about boxing and stuff like that when he was on the Joe Rogan podcast. And he was on the Theo Von podcast and stuff like that.
See, he actually allowed the voters to get to know him as a person, as opposed to Kamala Harris, who was too scared to go on Joe Rogan.
Exactly. And so, like, he goes there and, like, seriously, every fighter just simped for him. Like, it was so, like, over the top. Every fighter, I want to thank Donald Trump, and going over and talking to him after they won their fights, and all the American ones, like Michael Chandler and Bo Nickel. It was heaps funny because after Charles Oliveira won, he came out and he hugged and thanked somebody, like he jumped the fence, but then walked past Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and everyone on the internet's like, oh, look, I got so much respect for Charles Oliveira for snubbing Donald Trump. Guy's Brazilian and doesn't speak English. What does he care about the President of the United States?
Yeah.
Can't say anything to him. He speaks like next to zero English, actually.
Yeah.
So
I'll tell you what, that's one thing Donald Trump has done is he's brought a fascination to US politics. He's turned it into a sport, and
it's amazing.
He's brought people who ordinarily would have no interest in US politics, me included. It's just a fascinating subject. It's just extraordinary that with the rap sheet that Donald Trump has, that he's got back in and won another election over Kamala Harris. And that's why you talk about before, it's not a publicity stunt. It's just more sharply in focus because it's come just after he's won that election over Kamala Harris. Word of advice to the Democrat Party, don't get Beyonce or Taylor Swift to endorse you again. It didn't work with Hillary in 2016. It didn't work with Kamala Harris in 2024. Maybe give the celebrity endorsements a miss next time, guys. It hasn't worked twice. You really need to learn your lesson from that.
The thing floating around the internet that has no basis in evidence about how they all got paid, actually. They get paid to endorse them. And some of the people that endorse the Democrats actually, on the day of the election, voted Republican. They posted photos.
But this is the thing. This is why the polls seem to get it wrong with Trump, because if pollsters ring people and go, oh, who are you voting for? Oh, yeah, Kamala Harris. And then they go behind the curtain in the ballot box and go, oh, Trump.
That was one of the things. So the John Jones-Stipe Miocic fight was obviously one of the greatest of all times, but a mad drug cheat versus actually legitimately the greatest heavyweight of all time in all combat sports. Not all combat sports, sorry. All MMA. Stipe Miocic defended the UFC title, heavyweight UFC title, more than anyone else. When you look at UFC and MMA and things like that, across all of the weight classes, you have things like, George St. Pierre defended his title 12 times or something. Anderson Silva defended his title 12 times. Demetri Johnson 12 times. In the women, you have like Joanna Jędrzejczyk 6 times. But heavyweight changed his hands. Like, seriously, there was a period of time where every single heavyweight bout for like a year and a half had an ex-champion in it.
Yeah, right.
Because the power, it's just the power, they're big lads who don't have to cut weight.
Yeah.
And one guy told me a while ago, it was like in a jiu-jitsu reference, right? When you have a 100-kilo person versus a 50-kilo person, for example, if a 100-kilo kilos falls on someone who's 50 kilos, it'll hurt and cause serious injury. If 100 kilos falls on someone who's 100 kilos, it'll hurt and cause serious injury. The only difference is the 50-kilo person will have a bigger difficulty lifting the 100-kilo thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it's like in heavyweight. But Stipe Miocic defended his title 4 times. That's the record.
Yeah,
no one's ever done it before.
Yeah, right.
And so that's why John Jones wanted to fight him. But it was just a repeat of the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul. Stipe had been off for 4 years, clearly old. He retired afterwards. John Jones just picked him apart for 3 rounds and then kicked him in the ribs and knocked him out. And then John Jones simped for Donald Trump.
He did. I saw that he did the little Donald Trump dance in front of Donald Trump.
You know what's really funny about that? People have posted. John Jones follows Kamala Harris, well, up until now, follows Kamala Harris on Instagram, but not Donald Trump.
Oh, wow. How does that work?
Because they're all fake. He's looking... John Jones especially is massively fake. I'm scared to death of the guy. He's honestly, the scariest human being in the world. out of everyone in the world, that guy would just beat everyone. Like Dana White.
So if he was sitting here, maybe we wouldn't be saying this.
I ain't afraid of nothing, but I'm afraid of that guy. Like Dana White said once, it's a famous quote: 5 guys walk into a room with John Jones. John Jones is the only guy walking out.
Yeah.
Because that guy, like, just shows time and time again he can dominate everyone in every single way. He's the smallest of his brothers. His brothers are football players, but he'd kill his brothers. You know, the guy is but...
So isn't it funny how he was bowing down to Trump seemingly as a Kamala Harris supporter up until the election?
Yeah, because he does whatever makes him popular, because he's so unpopular.
Right, okay.
Because he's a drug cheat.
Yeah.
He ran over a pregnant woman, then jumped out of his car and ran away. He allegedly beat his wife, but actually he did beat his wife. He got charged, and now he just says, like, she's forgiven him. He... just talks absolute nonsense, changes his mind about bullshit. He was a Muslim for a while, and then, you know, when he's in front of Donald Trump, he's a Christian.
And he's seemingly a Trump supporter.
Yeah, now when Donald Trump's there, he's a Trump supporter, but leading up to the election, he's a Kamala supporter. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why he's a joke and everybody hates him, but still.
He probably saw the great reception Trump got when he walked into the arena, and he thought, well, I've got to play ball here and go
He's kind of like the Novak Djokovic of MMA, actually.
Right, okay.
Like, he's just always looking for people to love him. And I imagine him going to his wife, why don't they love me?
Yeah, I mean, I know you like David Warner, but I think David Warner's in that category as well.
Yeah. No, I just think people pick on David Warner, you know, a little bit too much.
Look, I think you could have made an argument for him to be the opener. If he had a showed form, I'd be picking him over McSweeney. But I just feel like with David Warner being a commentator on Fox now, I'm getting this Novak Djokovic. I'm getting this Novak Djokovic feeling of this guy's trying hard to impress people and people aren't buying it.
He's going to get his wife to go out and talk about him. That's it. So the Charles Oliveira-Michael Chandler fight was good on the weekend, except Michael Chandler is the dirtiest, biggest cheating fighter I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, right.
Conor McGregor is a mad cheat, but Michael Chandler broke basically every rule, and for some unknown reason, the referee didn't call him on it at all. He punched Charles Oliveira in the back of the head. He grabbed inside of Charles Oliveira's gloves. He grabbed the fence. He poked Charles Oliveira in the eye. And Charles Oliveira still managed to piece him up for 4 rounds and dominate him. So, eat that, Michael Chandler. That's it for the week, everyone. Don't forget to go to optimumcbd.store for all your CBD needs. You must be over 18 to order, and also orders over $99 get free delivery. And we'll see you next week with some more Latrell Mitchell news, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks, John. We may have a result of the first test when we sit down next week as well. It'll be the end of day 4 going into day 5. So we'll either be going into day 5 or we'll have a result of that first test to talk about as well.
Come on, Aussies.
Yes.
Thanks, producer chairs. Bye, everybody.
See ya.